There are only two ways you change the world: violence and storytelling. And if we can tell the story of these things, I'm very confident that we're going to evolve. We're going to get to amazing places.
Welcome to Point of Relation with Thomas Hübl, a podcast that illuminates the path to collective healing at the intersection of science and mysticism. In his conversations with visionaries, innovators, artists, and healers, Thomas invites guests into a relational experience that allows inspiration and innovation to emerge. This is the Point of Relation. Please note that this conversation includes mentions of molestation and rape. Please consider whether this material may be disturbing to you. If you anticipate this topic to be difficult to effectively process on your own, we do recommend you choose not to listen. If listening may support your healing process, then we invite you to continue. Our guest for today's episode is Stephen Gyllenhaal. In 2017, after 50 years in the psychological sector, Stephen founded the Identity Development Institute, helping people heal from the impact of trauma from conception through pre-verbal development. He's also been an award-winning Hollywood director, primarily focusing on psychological issues, and in recent years has turned his attention to documentaries that explore social structure and early human development. We hope you enjoy this conversation.
Welcome to the Point of Relation. My name is Thomas Hübl, and I have the honor and I'm very happy to be sitting here with Stephen Gyllenhaal. So, Stephen, a warm welcome to my podcast.
Thank you. I'm really grateful to be here and looking forward to it.
So, Stephen, you're passionate about making movies, and I think many people will know you from all kinds of movies that you made, and but you're also passionate about trauma. And so, how can you put these two strands together for us? How come that you operate in two fields? And I talked to you already, so I know that you're deeply into the understanding of trauma. So how come? Maybe you can explain this to us a bit.
Well, I don't really know anybody around me or that I've ever met anywhere who isn't traumatized, whether they know it or not. Certainly, I have experienced myself my whole life, and I know, having done a lot of therapy, and one of the things about being in Hollywood is there is a lot of focus on therapy. And when I lived in New York, there's a lot of focus there. So pretty early on, actually even before then, when I was in college in Connecticut, I wasn't doing well, and I needed to reach out for help. And interestingly, about the same year, I discovered movies, because I grew up in a very religious town where you weren't denied movies, you just didn't go to them. They just weren't something you took part in. The same year I discovered movies, I discovered cinema. There was a great theater where I went to school and showed foreign films, which is what I saw first. I also went to a therapist. And I think immediately, I think it was unconscious, but movies are about trauma. Movies are an expression of human beings. Mm-hmm. And a movie that doesn't have a traumatic element in it, whether it's the love story falls apart, or it's incredibly violent, or there's a superhero saving the world, or there's a small independent film which deals with a family that's struggling in some way and goes deep into things. There's not a movie that isn't about trauma. So they're inextricably linked. And I think for me, I didn't really understand it when I really was in New York, on the East Coast, fell in love with movies. I mean, movies saved my life, frankly. And they made me understand, when I was a senior in college, that I wasn't crazy, that Fellini, Bergman, Coppola, I was going to say Fellini again, because La Strada was one of the most important movies for me. It's the movie that made me go, I want to do that. I had no idea how to do it. I just went, that's what I want to do. And it wasn't even a decision. It was just movies made me feel like I was a part of the planet, that my own, personal suffering, not nearly as dramatic as many of the movies I saw, but it made me feel that I was experiencing something that other human beings experienced, and B, movies always processed it in some way. May not have been a happy ending, sometimes it was, may have been an ironic ending or a tragic ending, but I felt a part of the human race. And when I went to Hollywood, because by then I kind of just saw all of these movies and fell in love with the process and the big screen, and I still love the big screen, immensely. I was drawn to projects and subjects that were about trauma. And you didn't always get to do that. What do they say in the movie business? 3 for them, 1 for me. But most movies, even mainstream movies, are dealing with these kind of issues. So that's how it sort of emerged for me. And then, of course, therapy, all the way from my senior year in college until now, has led me to more and more clarity about trauma. I mean, I think when I started in therapy and then analysis and all these kinds of things, it was sort of Freudian based, and then object relations and Jung and all these people. And it really has been, as you know, over the last 20 years in particular, that we've begun to understand that trauma is at the core of what it appears we're, that we can say, these various maladaptive behaviors, so-called maladaptive behaviors, are in fact, I have found, brilliant adaptations to the trauma that we suffer personally. And, and I know you're very involved with, you can't separate the personal trauma, the issues that we human beings are struggling with, and separate it from all the other suffering that's going on in the world. You just can't do it. So that's not in a nutshell how I've come to it.
All right. And I have many questions. So as I listen to you, I would love to, you said something that I think is actually crucial, key, needs a lot of reframing. And the point is that maladaptive behaviors, as we call them, are actually very intelligent functions that help us to survive difficult situations better. And maybe you can speak a little bit about that, and maybe also speak a little bit to what you are passionate about, the identity development process, and how these two are, I mean, you're doing some trauma work also, and how we can understand, because many people pathologize themselves for having stuff inside that seems like not as functional as others, not as strong. These are my weaknesses. This is the stuff I want to hide. And what you just said is actually a tremendous chance to change and reframe that. Maybe you can speak a bit to that.
First of all, when you're young, you think you have to hide things. You have to come across in a certain way. You're terrified to really be who you are. And you think you're consciously doing it, and you are consciously doing it. What you don't understand is biologically you're doing it too. No matter who you are, you may say, I lived a great life. I had all these things. I can't complain about my life. But no matter who you are, when you were conceived in utero, and during birth, the early time development, you're very fragile. And we don't really understand, we really have not understood how miraculously complex we all are. So there's trauma in there for everybody. And it can be also trauma later as well. But to me, that early trauma is the most powerful trauma because we are so fragile, particularly in utero. So we all share it in some ways. There's a shared damage, or not even damage, there's damage done early on, and we adjust, and we have refined it, and we have emerged with it. I think for me, after 50 years of pretty much every form of therapy available, and I think one of the things that's interesting, one of the things as I've been reading your book, and I want to get into that a little bit. I grew up in a mystical environment based on a mystic named Emanuel Swedenborg. And it was really, really not a great experience. It was really, had become very calcified and was not working. It was very right wing and estranged for a lot of reasons. So I left that completely, abandoned it, and really have functioned in a secular life. I have really gone, this is where it is. I'm not going to look at the rest of it. I'm going to focus from conception through death, and that's it. Whatever goes on after it, I'm leaving alone. And it's interesting, just to sort of sidebar for a second, that having done that for almost 55, 60 years now in terms of therapy, I'm finding myself really connecting with everything you're doing, and not going back exactly to Swedenborg and what I grew up with, but it's science is leading us in the same direction that spirituality has, and it's becoming less and less controversial to be involved with both of them. In any case, I didn't. In the 80s and 90s, I got diagnosed with multiple personality disorder, and I'm working on a memoir. It's all really interesting stuff. The voices, the stuff, that all that kind of thing, really went on with me, and it was very confusing. There was a part of me that felt it was somewhat an illness, but there was something in me that knew, that understood. There was something kind of fabulous about it, something kind of amazing about it, something freeing me to be able to talk in voices and have all these things. It was all happening pretty much, well, always pretty much in a therapist's office. And I attributed it somewhat to, well, you're in the movie business, you're dealing with actors. They play different roles, Some are more feminine, some are more masculine. One's a villain, one's not. So I didn't ever quite totally feel comfortable pathologizing it. Ultimately, that was debunked. The scientific community came in and said, this is all nonsense. They had all these cases to prove it didn't exist, many of which in the last 10, 15 years have been revisited, and there's much more complication around it. It was a time when, a little bit like, and I think there's something similar to this, when Copernicus and Galileo said, hey, look, actually what's going on is the Earth is circling the sun, and the moon is circling the Earth, and it's really quite simple. And, the Catholic Church and a lot of other people said, we're going to have to execute you for this. We're going to have to burn you at the stake because this is wrong. It's terrifying for people to step outside of the prevailing point of view. And the idea that we could be carrying in us memories that were buried was something the psychiatric community had a big problem with. A lot of them spent a lot of money going to a lot of school, getting all this stuff. And then all of a sudden someone comes along and says, it's kind of simpler than all this stuff you're talking about. Not that the therapies and analysis and the 12-step programs and everything else I did haven't been useful, but they didn't get to the core issue, which is trauma. Mm-hmm. And when you are traumatized, you split and you bury the parts that you can't function with. So I was diagnosed multiple personality disorder in the 90s. Then it was debunked, and I left it because it was not really solving the problem. They were using hypnosis. They were trying to get back to, you must have been molested. This is what happened. I couldn't ever get to it. It never really worked. Not really the solution anyway, until I did this work. Until one day, I had made this movie called In Utero. I think we've talked about a little bit, which was my wife and I were trying to get pregnant. I already had 2 wonderful children and had fallen in love again and wanted to have another child. And we were having problems. So I said, well, let's go make a documentary about science from conception to birth. Only a white guy in Hollywood could go, I want to go make a movie to solve my problem. Mm-hmm. But in the process, made a really important movie, which brought trauma right back up to the front, and also the trauma from conception to birth, and then even further into preverbal development. Because then what happened? A group in Europe saw the movie and said, "What's going on here is exactly what we're capturing in our work." So I did a session. And the session brought up, like that, after 30 years, well, after actually like 20 years of trying to figure out was what caused the multiple personality, that my grandfather had molested me between the ages of 5 and 6. Had no idea. I loved my grandfather. He was wonderful. Of course, to get through life, you need to have a loving grandfather. So my system was able to really put that down there and no memory of it. Suddenly it comes up. I kind of go, it can't be true. I've done all this work. But over the period of the next few years doing this work, identity-oriented psychotrauma, which is what I then ultimately brought to the United States, which is the Institute. Doing that work made very clear to me that, yes, I was molested. Then I went back to my hometown, began to explore it, and it's all come to the surface. All this stuff has come to the surface. All this stuff that I understand why nobody wants to bring it to the surface. It's awful stuff. It's just the body. It's just things going on. In fact, I've come really clear that it's not about the physical actions that are the most problematic. It's the environment in which that's allowed to happen. Mm-hmm. And in fact, in a way, when you go one step further, it's the environment of the planet that's the bigger problem that allows this to happen, the patriarchal structure, all those kinds of things. Anyway, when that all really unfolded, and I have this institute, and it's over the last 5 or 6 years, I've really been refining it and working with it and training people. And then all of a sudden I'm going, we have to step out into the world with this. We have to step out in the world. And here I am talking to you. And I want to laugh for a second, because in your book, which thank you for sending to me, before it's been published, one of the things it says right in the beginning is, we live stressful lives. How do we deal with the stress? We're going from one thing to the next. So I haven't been able to finish the book because I've been so stressed. I have so many things going on. But I've been reading a lot of it. And kind of what I want to explore a little bit is, we are in complete agreement. The whole idea of attunement is exactly what I have uncovered, or I have discovered already existing, which we call resonating. And in fact, you even use it. And the method that brought all this stuff up for me in the first session like that, and then refined it more and more, which brought up the memories that were in my body, Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score. It all came up. It uses talking, but it really is using the body, that my body can pick up from your body or other people, everyone, and they do it anyway. You go to a party and you're freaking out because you're picking up everybody's craziness. Maybe you do drugs or whatever to kind of get through the, or whatever to get through the night, or whatever it is. But really, it's kind of equal to Galileo saying the Earth is circling the sun. That we are able to really feel each other. That someone else, after 50 years, in one session said, I'm feeling your grandfather. I'm feeling him stalking you. And I'm going, no, it's not possible. No, I'm feeling it. And I said, well, maybe something happened when I was 3. No. This is 5 years old. And that's when it really, for a short period of time, he used me. And, you go back and why did he do it? And all these kinds of things. And you find ultimately a kind of forgiveness, but you can't find any of that until you've dug it up. So
that's very powerful what you said also about, and I think that's the healing principle, is being in resonance with two nervous systems being able to mirror each other. And that's the assistance sometimes we need to allow something to come up when it has, because it creates the safety to be able to let that information come out. And human relationship, like there is no healing. When I'm distant and you're telling me just things, not so much is going to happen. But when we have a warm relationship and there is safety in the room, then stuff in you or in me can start to bubble up. And you said it very clearly that this is the main principle of healing, and it's based on resonance. And maybe because I think that's where we have such a deep understanding, and we share, like, this is how healing works. And I would love you to speak a little bit, because I know you're passionate about resonance and you're also doing a movie about resonance. Maybe you can speak a little bit to what that is and how trauma affects resonance, and how healing actually allows us to be more in resonance, like speaking the same language. Even if you don't speak the same language, resonance still happens.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, I think what happens in a session, an ID session called identity development session, can be two different versions of it. One is a one-on-one, in which one person is facilitator, is helping the other person sense what's going on in them.
Mhm.
The other way, which both of them are really very powerful. The other one is you ask the person what do you want to address, what's concerning you, and they do a sentence of intention, can be as long as they want. You say, well, pick 3 words out of it, and then pick 3 people to resonate those words.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they then start to resonate. And what happens is these people, and it can be the first time you do it without any training, that part of it. There's a lot of training that's necessary to be a facilitator, but to be a resonator, you feel the splits. Or if, for instance, there's a certain sentence addressing a certain issue, or the sentence is a cover for something deeper, which can often happen, what is deeper that needs to be addressed emerges and the splits show up. There's a point, I think, in your book at one point when you talk about when trauma hits, there's a snapshot, a frozen snapshot.
Mhm.
And it's usually, and actually not usually, it is almost always an age. So as a facilitator, I'll be seeing 3 people, and I can sense that one of the resonators feels young. They talk young. So I say, well, how old are you? And they'll say, I'm 3. I feel like I'm 3. And even the first time you say, how old are you? Well, I feel like, I don't know. Well, just pick a number, And they go, 7. And then you go to the subject and you say, what happened with you when you're 7? And I usually gasp and go, oh, that's when XYZ happened. So the resonating is very specific. In my case, it was after all these years, up came my grandfather. So I think it makes utter sense, really, that an MRI machine, EKG machine, machines, they're valuable, but the best instrument in the world is another human being.
That's right.
With all the same systems, the neurobiology, the digestive system, the bones, the skin, the eyes, all these things, these miraculous things that, of course, are as infinite to me as the whole universe is picking up the pain, the wounds that other people feel. So to me, it's amazing doing these sessions, because someone walks in. I have a great story. I'm not sure I can really. Well, I sort of will tell it. I'll tell it. So I was hanging around. I don't do this anymore, but I did it at the time. Someone said, well, how does this work? So we were sitting around drinking wine, hanging out, and this guy comes up, and he's the best friend of someone else. I don't know anything about this guy. He's a big fancy lawyer. He's whatever. And he has an artificial leg, something happened, wasn't really sure. And my good friend introduced him, was very proud to know this guy. And so he said, so how does this work? I said, well, just, say a sentence. Now, the reason I don't do this anymore is because a lot happens in an hour. And to do it for 10 minutes is like sending someone to the edge of a cliff and not being there for them. But in any case, it was early on. I was learning, you learn how to do this. That's why we have the training. And I said, well, come and say, he said, okay, I said, so pick 3 words. So he picks 3 words, and I'm sort of sitting there, and also I try and adjust people to do the resonating themselves or help them with the resonating. But in this case, I was still early on, and I was resonating, and I was loving the process. And he started talking about this word or that word. I forget the details. And something strikes me that 3 years old is coming up. So I asked him, what happened at around 3 years old? And he gasps. And he says, that's when I lost my leg. And his friend, and he starts to be really deeply moved. And he tries to fight it, but he can't. And his friend has never heard this, never knew why he lost his leg. He's never spoken about it. And of course, you can't help but link up everything there. And you go, you want to be a cool dude? I get it. But that's where the truth sits with you. Now, I wish I'd spent another hour with them. I wish I hadn't been quite so glib about it, but it gives you an example of how it doesn't matter what the sentence is. The body knows we have an opportunity here to let some of this stuff up, and it'll move like that. It moves, the mind moves as brilliantly as the body moves when it's been cut. It's going to try and heal it. So that happens all the time in this work. And I wanted to be really careful. I didn't want to reach out. I mean, certainly I'm in Hollywood and I'm known to some degree, but I didn't want to really step out with this until I really felt we were ready to address. We're ready to be a part of the puzzle that you've been putting together with so many other people. I did a movie in which Gabor Mate's in it. I know him. I know Dan Siegel. I can't remember how I met Dan Siegel. I think I just searched him out. He's an awesome little, he's a wonderful guy. He wears this weird hat. He goes around with this weird hat all the time. And I've been sort of drifting towards these people, but haven't really wanted to step out until now, because it's too important a piece of the puzzle not to now risk feeling like a jerk sometime and just doing whatever it takes to speak about what a lot of people go, no, this isn't real, but it's real, totally real.
It's very real. And I see this every day, like yourself. I see this so often, that this attunement, also the attunement to specific storages in the nervous system at a certain age development, exactly how I describe it. And you get a feeling and you bring it in connection, into contact, and then it opens. And I think if that relationship is there, then it's amazing, because everything that happened when people were alone, when it was painful, when there wasn't the right support, suddenly there is support, and the nervous system wants to heal it. Like the detox wants to happen if there is the right environment for it. So you become the environment, and an attuned environment. That was everything that was missing. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so traumatically constricted.
I would switch it slightly, I think. But something you said in the book, which I have to finish, but I kind of was rushing through it. I got, I'm going to be seeing him. Oh, I wish we did this another week later, but I'm so stressed I probably wouldn't have gotten to it anyway. But what I've learned in the work is all you need to do, and I think what you're saying is, it's like, I'm not sure about the field. I'm kind of careful about that. And of course, I'm trying to work within the confines of science as we know it, even as I'm being pulled more and more towards something much more powerful and bigger. But it's that what I've learned is when someone opens up, when a resonator is suddenly 3 years old and is terrified, just be there with them. Exactly. Don't try to heal them. Just listen. It's like, just be next to them. And in fact, when they say, I'm so scared, I don't know I'm going to die. Don't go, no, you're not going to die. It's sort of like when a kid scrapes his knee and you go, no, you're going to be fine. No. You're with that. And you even say, yes, you feel like you're going to die. You don't try to move them anywhere. You just sit next to them. And if you've done enough work and you've cleared up your own as much as you can, it takes a lifetime, I think, then you're just there. You're just next to them. That's all a child really needs.
Exactly. It's beautiful. Yeah, right. And that creates the safety that things can start to move again. Exactly what you said now. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that's the power of attunement. That's a non-doing thing. It's like the attunement is a natural way of expressing love, basically. And so it's beautiful. And so, how do you think? Two things. Well, let's come back to the level of the movies, because I think your life brought you two streams, and you combine them beautifully. So how do you see, when we look at the more systemic dimension of trauma? I mean, there's so much trauma in the world. There's so many large-scale wounds and they're being created as we speak. So how do you see the role of movies? On the one hand, in a way, movies can trigger a lot of, through violence and things like, trigger a lot of trauma in the society, but also movies can be like a way to bring things into our awareness and to literally do some collective trauma work. And I would like you to speak a little bit. How can movies be part of the collective trauma work that we need to do? And how can it sensitize us and bring things to our awareness that maybe in our daily life we don't see, we don't feel, we are not in contact with? Maybe you can talk a little bit about the collective healing tool, because I think life gave you like access to a collective healing tool, which you are using beautifully.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe
Well, let me give a couple of examples, and I'm going to start with two examples that were Oscar winners, actually, which to me indicate an awareness, certainly in the Hollywood community, that we have experienced something important and oftentimes unexpected. The first one was 1952, I guess that was La Strada. And the movie of La Strada is about Anthony Quinn. Am I forgetting his name? Anthony Quinn, yeah. Plays this muscle man, bully, horrible person. He basically buys this young girl, throws her in the back of his little Conestoga wagon that's attached to his motorcycle. This is post World War II, Italy, a disaster, and basically uses her completely. He falls in love. He kills her lover. And then finally he throws her away. Beautifully done. I mean, beautifully acted and so raw. The very end of the movie, there's a song, there's music. Talk about music. Music is about resonating. Music is and it's Nina Roto, great composer, in this song that the lover used to sing that was now dead. Walking down the street and he hears the song. He's a big mother guy, and he goes down, he's walking down the street and there's a woman hanging clothes and he says, where'd that song come from? She said, oh, a girl sang it. She said, oh, where is she? And in the audience, you're going, oh no, here we go again. She said, oh, she died on a beach. She died. My father found her on the beach. She died. And he's eating an ice cream cone and he just eats the ice cream cone. I think or maybe he's smoking a cigarette. I can't quite remember. He just walks away. Whatever. That night he gets drunk at a bar. Drunker and bullying, carrying on. Finally goes out, everyone's yelling at him. He goes out and he goes to the beach. It makes me cry even now. And he falls down. And he starts to weep. And he weeps and he weeps and he weeps. And when I saw the movie, and I was a senior in college, all these hip kids around, and I can't stop weeping myself. Everyone leaves the theater. I can't stop weeping. My girlfriend, who's with me, passed me on the arm and leaves me a week later. It's like, that's the end of this. And that's when I went, understand. He gets something, and that's what I'm going to do. So it's music changed my life. Another movie last year won the Oscar, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is like the Marvel movies, multiverse sense of quantum that's been going on. And some of the Marvel movies are really trying to capture, we're in a quantum age now. It's all shifting. Movies are doing that. But that movie is really just about a little family trying to figure their shit out. And I was blown away by that, and I went, and when it came out, I heard, oh, that movie. And I went, this is the most amazing movie I've seen. And then it wins the Oscar, it wins everything, because people know when something's come along and they are moved deeply too. So those are two movies that I think capture it for me. In terms of my work, I think I've really seen that most of my work is trying to figure that out. I've just finished this documentary called Uncharitable, which is about the charitable sector, the mission-driven sector, and the triumphs and the fail and the tragedies that have happened, because that doesn't really work. And that movie is really designed to overturn the way the charitable sector functions in this country. That's 10 million people working who are not being respected, who aren't really able to be unleashed. And in a way, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's me going, okay. And, why did I do this? It's complicated. It wasn't like I had I'm going to save the world. My friend had been destroyed by it. I kind of got involved with it and got deeper and deeper into it. But I can see, and we'll see what happens with it, that it may very well shift a really important part of the world sector, which is the mission-driven, trying to do good work, but not getting enough money, not getting enough support. But if it can be made robust, it'll impact the for-profit world and it'll impact government. And that's a really important piece and all that. So that's one movie. I tried to make it as emotional as possible, but it's an intellectual statement. I'm also working on two other movies. One is, I think I talked slightly about, resonating. Okay, cool. Resonating is real. I believe in it. How do we extrapolate that or play with that into a TV series? How do I begin to speak about it in a TV series? Well, let's play with this. And suddenly an idea popped into my head. And, I'm learning I think my writing, we'll see if I get this show in made, but it's like my brain is working very differently. A lot of things have been cleared out of my life. I have much less need to look at myself anymore. It's just, here I am. I'm going to do what I can do. So anyway, I went, well, I know resonating works when I do sessions on Zoom. Someone can be in Africa. Someone can be in China. Someone can be in Moscow. Maybe one of them, their system goes out and they're just on the phone and they're just barely talking, and all the resonating still goes on.
Exactly.
It's not even about seeing people. It's something much deeper. It's on the planet. So if that's true, well, then why can't we resonate with aliens? So I went, okay, this is going to be a TV series about someone who resonates aliens. In this case, they're lost, because anyone who's in a rocket ship coming from somewhere else, like Elon Musk wants to do, or James Cameron wants to do, it wouldn't be easy. So they're lost in 4 generations anyway, and then they crash on the wrong side of the moon and blah, blah, blah. And the whole thing unfolds, and it's all these people who can resonate. And the people who can resonate aliens are kind of crazy people. So I have some wonderful characters to play with. And the other thing is, there's another documentary, which is going to be called The Universe Sings. And again, it's moving even beyond the Earth. It's going, the whole universe sings. I actually was Googling, no, I'm much less Googling AI, much less, that's a mixed metaphor, but using AI, and went, do planets have frequencies? Yes. That means galaxies have frequencies. We all have frequencies. We're all these miraculous musical instruments. So I went, I want to do a documentary on that, and you can see, it's like, you have visually, you have the whole universe to play with. Visually, you have the London Philharmonic to play with. I know that Yo-Yo Ma is very into this, so I'll get him to play. I can get access because I make movies, which is incredibly privileged, to kind of pull everyone in and say, hey, let's play with the fact that the universe sings, and let's see what we come up with. You, Dan Siegel, Gabor Mate, let's bring you all in, neurobiologists, some weird freak somewhere, and just bring this whole thing together to talk about how we are all singing to each other, and bring the poetry alongside the science. And then maybe be moving more and more towards mysticism and all of that, creeping towards there with great care. And I'll lean on you for that. I think it's like, because everything in the book, and I do love it, because you go science, mysticism, they're both connected. And it really helps. I think I heard something the other day, which is, there are only 2 ways you change the world: violence and storytelling. And if we can tell the story of these things, and that's really what filmmaking is all about, and novels and art, all art is some form of storytelling, then I am very confident, even in the face of so much that would indicate one should be otherwise. I'm very confident that we're going to evolve. We're going to get to amazing places with art and science and mysticism, but I'm going to leave that more to you.
No, that's so beautiful, Stephen. Like, it's so lovely to also hear you talking about like what it means to come back to a sensing of resonance. And so, because like our time is very intellectual, and science needs that, and that's very good. But if we also know that trauma gets compensated through intellectualization of what we can't feel, so we overthink what we can't feel. And what you're saying is, you're making a movie that brings back the part of us that is sensing and is singing with the universe, that we're all singing and we're all sending out information, and we all receive information every moment. Even our conversation, I feel you, you feel me, we're in a dance, and we are in this flow together, and that's data flow. And I think that that's an enormously important movie. It's to remind us of how much information there is and how much information we have access to. And I think go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, you talk about libraries in the book, and it's like, I think about, the Babylonian library that got burnt down or anything, millions of books. And they're all in here. They're all in here.
Exactly. They're all in here. And I think if this can be made visible, like that our bodies are actually millions of years old and carry a lot of wisdom of all the lives that have been lived, that we can have this conversation now. There are millions of years sitting here in you and in me, and how we unlock that wisdom and that information that we have access to. And you said it so beautifully also when you described the resonating, and actually that people have that can suddenly get information just by being in an environment where that's being held for them. And and that's amazing. I think there's so much healing going to happen from that, and we need a lot of healing. When you look at the colonialism ring around the world, there's so much trauma that happened, racism, like sexual violence. There are so many, or wars, or genocide. I think to listen to the collapsed resonance and to the intact resonance and bring the trauma of the world back into resonance. I think that's, if we can scale that, that would be an amazing thing. And I think a movie is predestined to do that.
I think so. I think movies, and a number of movies, can't just be one, it has to be a lot of them. And it also has to be the dialogue around movies. That I think there's the social media. I mean, it's sort of like all this, social media is so the kids, that blah, blah, blah. I'm going, this is a global brain now. This is a global mind where AI, we're going to go, AI, no, I can reach the outer edges of thinking, which is valuable like that now. I mean, I've been using Google and AI and going back and forth and go, AI is a lot easier. And, I'm going, let's not be afraid, because I think, let's not be afraid to change and evolve. Because I think in a way, my other grandfather committed suicide when he was 39, I think, or 41. No one wants to ever look at it clearly. They were afraid, people who fight wars, I mean, they're afraid. I mean, it's why they have these, it's like, it's trying to, you talk about not resonating. You kill somebody, that really stops your ability to resonate. My father was in a war and he killed people, and he didn't do it great a lot of times. And he had to be really drunk to talk about it. And he talked about it. And it wasn't his fault. He went off at 18 years old, actually 17 years old, and his mom had to write the thing to get him off there because he wanted to go fight for America. And kind of that was, once he killed people, really, really difficult. But part of what I think we have to do, is because we are privileged, we can go back. We can resonate the horror. That's what I have found also, that when you're a resonator doing this work in ID sessions, you experience the absolute horror of a 3-year-old. I didn't experience what it was like to be raped by a guy who was, fat and ugly and drunk and whatever else. I didn't resonate. I couldn't resonate that. Someone else did it. Someone else sat beside me and felt the vibration that I had to protect myself from. And we have to do that. I mean, I don't really we're going to definitely talk more about all this, but it's like we have to go back and admit what the species has done and experience it. And when we do that, when we sit beside it, when we're just there, when we don't pretend we're gods, that we can heal everything. And to me, that's part of what so many therapists suffer from. They believe they can heal somebody else. And in the process, they really are banging their head against the wall. The only way to heal is what we're talking about. It's just someone is sitting beside me. They're feeling it, so I don't quite have to feel it. So then I can see it in somebody else. And then, I have been around enough people who have resonated my horrible pain as a little child, bewilderment, all these things. And that has so helped me, so many people. And at the same time, I have resonated other people's horrific pain. I mean, horrible stuff. what's interesting about doing that as a resonator is that your body is experiencing someone else's horror. Someone else's absolute horror. So your body goes, and when you're done, you go, whoa, I'm not dead. And my whole system got to practice absolute horror, absolute terror, near death, or horrible hatred toward me. And I'm okay. So the body gets better, gets sort of stronger at dealing with its own pain. So it's this give and take that goes back and forth all over the place, which makes life really fun on some level. My 8-year-old son goes, Dad, you talk to everybody all the time. I don't know who it is. You talk to people all the time. Don't do it anymore. And I go, sorry, that's what I do. Because I'm having so much fun. Because 85% of the people, I'm driving down the street and maybe I cut someone off by mistake. And I pull up next to them and said, wind down the window. And they're like, I said, I'm sorry. Or I'm driving down the street and someone cuts me off and I pull up and I go, you remind me of me. You drive just like I drive. And immediately we're friends, At 85%, even like 90% of the time, people just love it. 10%, they look at you like you're a crazy person. So you go, okay, the odds are good that I'm going to have some fun. And when it's not, the man or woman or whatever is just having a really bad day, or they're just really headed down a road that is, it's okay. Because I'm going to play with most of the people. I'm going to be that 3-year-old or the 5-year-old really that I couldn't be. 3-year-olds also, because it wasn't really about what my grandfather did. It was much more my father's growing up with a father who committed suicide, then World War II, my mom losing the lover during the war because his plane crashed. It's all these other things, talk about world trauma that I was dealing with at 3 years old that I couldn't really play. So now at 73, I'm going to play. I'm going to be a kid, more and more.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's also the feel you transmit it. It's not just intellectual. You transmit it. Yeah. That's beautiful. And also, I think what you said about this capacity that we actually get better and better the more we do that, the practice the resonance, it actually opens up our universe, and our life becomes much richer
much richer.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. So that's amazing, Stephen. I see it's the end of our time. I would love to have a series of conversations with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so much more we could go in deeper. So if you're up for it, maybe we can have
anytime.
Yeah, that would be
I'm
lovely.
up for it anytime. And then I'll get the book fully read. And then I can.
Okay, so next time.
Yeah. And also I'll send you my memoir when it's ready. Because what you're going to see is my memoir is a personal journey. It's funny. My memoir is a personal journey through all my psychological stuff and Hollywood, a lot of stories about Hollywood, and being a father, and my children who are, miraculous, both of them, and actually impacting the world even in bigger ways. Maggie just wrote one of the best scripts I've ever read, and she's in the middle of all the directing problems about it. But it's a great feminist, totally different from what she's done. And I'm going, whatever's going on in my life, it's percolating outwards. But I think the funny thing is, okay, there's a memoir and then there's your book. And they're like exactly on path with each other. So yeah, I'm up for any time you want to talk again. I'm here.
Yeah, so we will contact you. I think if you have a series, like a few conversations, and then we go deeper into some subjects and we share our experience, this would be very rich. I would love that. Yeah.
And also the movie, we'll get, then I get to interview you when I get the movie rolling.
Okay, now I'm looking forward to that. I think that's a fantastic movie that will have a lot of impact. Yeah. Yeah. So send me your manuscript when it's ready. I'm very curious, and so we get to talk soon again. And thank you so much. This was a rich journey through different parts, and I love it how you allow yourself also to be touched. When it comes naturally, and it's beautiful. So it's so authentic. Thank you very much.
And I didn't used to be able to do that. And I wasn't able to do it at my peril. Mm-hmm. I had various little physical ailments along the way that were saying to me, beep, 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 let yourself go. And that's what's so amazing about where we are in 2023. This is all happening. You're doing it. All these other people are doing it. We're kind of getting a handle on it to be able to open up and be what we really are. So yeah, away we go.
That's a lovely way to end our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hello, my name is Thomas Hübl, and I just had a fantastic conversation for my podcast with Stephen Gyllenhaal, a movie director, and also deeply interested in trauma and trauma healing, and actually a fantastically deep and resonating conversation where we also talked about the principle of resonance and how our relationships are actually the capacity to resonate with each other and to be deeply attuned to one another, and how trauma healing needs that capacity of resonance so that we can begin to create shared worlds in the areas where we actually carry pain, and the pain that we need to suppress in order to continue our life, and how that shared world creates actually a deeply healing environment. So if that's of interest to you, so please listen to my podcast, The Point of Relation, and Stephen Gyllenhaal's exploration of his own life, trauma, movies. Very interesting.
Thanks for listening to Point of Relation with Thomas Hübl. Stay connected and get updates about new episodes by visiting our website, pointofrelationpodcast.com, and by subscribing to the Thomas Hübl YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share about us with your community on social media. Thank you. We appreciate your support.